Good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan Patrick with Stambaugh Ness, and welcome to our February, our chilling of February virtual vision user group reading, or maybe we need to start calling it Vision/Vantagepoint. I hope everyone is doing well. I kind of feel like Punxsutawney Phil may have been lying to us because it is wicked cold and snowy where I am today. But we will go ahead and get started. Hopefully you have a warm beverage, and we're just going to kind of start cranking down through here, going quickly through the news and updates, and then we will move on to the amazing presentations. So, of course, my slide deck is not moving forward. Let me see what the deal is. This is just great. There we go. Yippee. All right, so just as housekeeping items, we have a lot of people signed up. Over 400 people are signed up. So you all are on mute when you enter the meeting today. The handout is available under the handouts area. So if you check that out, you should be able to get the handout for today. Also, some general GoToWebinar housekeeping items. You can use the little red arrow if that pesky bar is in your way. You can also use the button to make it full screen. That's where number 2 is over there. You can raise your hand, quite frankly, but we'll probably ignore you because people seem to like to play with that button. So the important thing is if you have a question, please put that in the questions panel. That's the area that we monitor throughout the entire webinar today. And if we aren't able to get to your question during the event, we will get back to you afterwards. We have a jam-packed, full, fun time here today, actually with a guest, and so hopefully we'll be able to get all those questions answered. So moving right along, the first thing that we have on tap for today is a success story, and this was a presentation that Barbara and Josh from Architectural Nexus did at Insight. And we thought it was a great, compelling use of vision and a success story. So we have them on tap for today. And then Melissa does have an item under our Preparing for Vantagepoint, the series. Again, I'm Susan Patrick. We got Melissa, we got Barbara, and we have Josh. And thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time to join us today and walk through the amazing things that you and your firm did with vision. So first and foremost, just some user group meetings. And I noticed when I saw this slide real quick that we kind of have things in reverse order. Maybe that's just to see if you're paying attention. But anyway, down in the bottom right-hand corner is our next face-to-face meeting in Central PA. That is on March 12th. Melissa will be there helping facilitate that particular event. Maybe I'll be there as well. You never know. We also have our Pittsburgh meeting coming up in March that I always attend, and it seems as though Melissa might be able to join there. And then we have our next virtual meeting up in the upper left-hand corner scheduled for a month from today. Another event that we have coming up is taking leadership transition into the next generation, or next gen as we like to call it. This is kind of an add-on to a webinar that we did a few weeks ago, I guess, about talking about planning for the future, and this one is about leadership transition. So don't miss this particular event where our very own Glenn Spinello will be presenting. So without further ado, we're going to go turn it over to Barbara and Josh. So Kaylee, if you can make them the presenter. And then we'll get ready to rock and roll and key up some of our famous polling questions. So Barb and Josh, you guys are on tap.
Great.
And Susan, we apologize if there's any audio issues, just let us know. They're in a room that doesn't have really good audio, so we're doing the best that we can today. Barb, the screen that I see is your presenter view, not the presentation view. So if you want to switch that up.
The presenter view. All right, how do I switch that? Susan, I am not sure. Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Well, what we'll do is we'll pull up polling questions while you're trying to figure out which which view and screen to get sharing. So Kaylee, if you can go ahead and pull up our first polling question that pertains to Barb and Josh's presentation, that would be great. So the first one, it kind of ties into their topic today, is we're trying to get an idea of the role that you play in your organization. Are you primarily, and again, we know people wear many hats, right? But are you primarily an owner executive, a PM, accounting, HR, other, chief cook and bottle washer? All right, we're trending here, and we'll go ahead. I think we have, oh, people are still voting. Some people may not know who they are today, because I see a lot of people in other. I would be curious as to what that is. I guess we'll never know. So go ahead and pull up the results of that, Kaylee. You can go ahead and close that out. I think we have a good sampling there. So 8% are owners, executives. We got 5% PMs, 60% accounting, 2 HR, and the other larger quantity, 24% are other. So again, that's interesting. So let's go ahead and move into our next polling question. So we know that many of you are multidisciplined, but if you could just kind of categorize yourself as, you know, how you top categorize yourself: architectural, engineering, A&E combined, consulting, or other. People know the answer to this question much faster than the other one. So go ahead and close that out, Kaylee. So it looks like the majority of them are E, and then we got architectural, and then we got A&E and consulting rounding it up. So this is great information to know. And then our next polling question. I'm polling question crazy today. We already did that one, Kaylee. There we go. What market do you primarily serve? So if you kind of looked at the areas of your business, which one takes precedence, or which one do you have the majority of work under? You guys are voting fast today. Everybody must have had their coffee or their caffeine or... Awesome. So we can go ahead and close that out, Kaylee. And so we have 44%, which is the majority of commercial, and then our other leading number is governmental. All right, so I think I might have one, maybe two more. I can't remember. We created so many. All right, how large is your firm? Put these into buckets, just because we can't have you put a number. But in our survey that pops up after the event today, which we love it when you guys fill that out, I believe we do have the same question in there, and you can be more specific in that particular answer. All right,
I think it's fair to tell everybody we're limited to 5 choices here, which is why we do what we do here.
That's true. It's not because we're stingy. It's because we're limited to 5 buckets. All right, awesome. So, wow, this is interesting. A lot of you are larger firms, over 120, so this is pretty cool. Very cool. And I don't think we have another one for this group. So I'm going to turn it back over to Barbara and Josh, and hopefully you've figured out your sharing for sharing the presentation screen. So Barbara, you can take it over.
So Susan, do you see the title slide now?
I do not. Go ahead and let's just close.
It's showing the poll.
Yeah, close out that poll, Kaylee, please.
Showing the first poll. Oh, we have that one in there twice.
The poll is closed, so it looks like it's frozen there. So give me 1 second.
Okay. Was wanting us to break down that other bucket. All right, and then switch it back over to Barbara. There we go. All right, let's see what you got going on, Barb.
There you go.
Yay! Success.
Awesome.
All right, turning it over to you guys.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
All right, so let's jump right in. Sorry about the technical difficulties there.
Always an adventure.
We always deal with those. All right, so first things first. This is, again, a story of how our process evolved, what we went through, and the successes that we've been seeing. So we're going to touch on what we've seen. Again, this is not a prescriptive everybody should do. It's more, this is what we experienced. And hopefully you can pull the good pieces out and leave the stuff that you don't need behind. But through all of this, Barbara has been an amazing consultant for us, kind of guiding us through the process and helping us ask the right questions. So with that being said, I'll touch a little bit on who we are as a firm, what we've done through implementation and beyond, and some of the key issues that we were focused on, and then we can analyze our results. Okay, so just a quick introduction of who I am. I'm a principal architect here at Architectural Nexus. We all have, there's a bunch of principals here that have different roles, different things that we try to manage, and I'm over financial project management for our firm. We have 120 employees currently, amongst two offices here in Salt Lake and also in Sacramento. I have a wide range of experience, mostly in commercial development and other project types. So like I mentioned, at the time, we were 130 people. Again, this is a fluctuation, and that happens all the time. We're a collection of multitude of different specialties, and we believe that that is one of our greatest strengths, bringing diversity to the markets that we engage in. By the numbers, so Architectural Nexus, if you broke this down at the time that we started the implementation process, we had 32 true project managers that were in our system. Two offices, like I mentioned, our main office is here in Salt Lake City, and there were 20 principals. Now, for some, this might be high, but for our firm and the diversity that we seek, that is a very strong piece for our firm. 32 project managers. I'm going to focus on that number because through this process, we actually did something unique where we pulled the plug on all of our PMs and started over. This started with a question as the president and I were sitting in a meeting to talk about what we could do to better implement efficiency. And we threw out the crazy idea, what if we could start over? But before all that, let's just talk about who we are. Our culture is one of the most important things for our firm. We're an ESOP, which is another unique factor for who we are. And we care about our employees. We care about their meaningful experiences both on projects and at home. And we wanted that culture to be implemented in our processes. Part of who we are is our design process. I think most architectural firms would agree that how they design is deeply rooted in how their firm is set up. That being said, we were seeing problems. Our project management process never had that definition. And when you focus solely on design, efficiency sometimes goes to the back of the bus. And we were starting to see those issues, those pains over the years. One of the things that we needed to do was throttle the quantity and the quality of our project managers. We need better project managers that could do more. So this is, again, that question that as we were sitting there, you said, yeah, what if we could start over? What if everybody had to interview for their job? It sounded weird at the time, but that was the premise upon which we started. So our goal was to get trained project managers using a coordinated system. So in April 30th, after we'd already engaged with Barbara and started to figure out what system we wanted to apply, we said, let's start over. We had 32 project managers. We did a system reset with our accounting department. Of all PMs, we went to 0 project managers. Now, we prepped our principals with, I believe, 1 day. And this was at our annual management retreat. And all the principals, we said, as of, and we looked at our watches, we said 8 o'clock, all PMs have been taken off of your projects. And all the principals' eyes got really big. And we said, you will now assume the role of PM and PIC until your project managers are correctly trained, this is what we're doing. So then we rolled out what we're going to be talking about. So through that, we went through a vetting process and training courses over the next month. And on May 30th, what emerged was 20 vetted project managers. And I'll show what that means in a minute. So we then had to implement and get all our projects now built into the Deltek Vision system. Barbara, do you want to elaborate on that, what that really meant for us? Because we were using Vision, but we weren't using all the pieces.
Right, yeah, so obviously you were like a normal traditional firm starting with the accounting piece, and so we went through that implementation process and started with the small implementation team to start looking at where did you want to take planning, and then created the training project or training process for those project managers, and brought everything online with the resource planning module.
So part of this, as I mentioned, PM vetting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share what our steps were because I think this is a little unique. I don't know. I've never heard of other firms yanking the plug on their PMs. We said, okay, let's set the bar. Previously, like I said, we had, if you needed a PM, we could create a PM. Problem was they weren't trained. So we said, okay, you got to have minimum experience. And we set it pretty low. We didn't actually set it very high. And that fit more our culture. Second, principals. You've got to mentor. We recommended that they take ownership of who they were sponsoring. So if I was going to sponsor 2 project managers, that meant I needed to personally mentor and work with them to make sure that they were doing their job and their responsibility. And the third, we have a finance ops committee, which is we call Triad. We got the CEO, CEO, and CFO, and they meet. They meet all the time, but once a month minimum, and usually weekly, to review the sponsorships. And so this was, they had to agree to it. And the final one is the PM would be notified, so they didn't even know they were being sponsored. They would be notified and they would sign an agreement. We wanted them to take it seriously and say, yes, I agree to take financial responsibility for the projects that I'm working on. And that was a commitment to the president himself. So this was kind of how we built this. So then we began. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in my understanding, if I remember correctly, were also things like making sure they updated their plans according to your firm's business processes, which was weekly, doing daily timesheets, right? And if I remember correctly, that there were some PMs that were proposed that maybe finance didn't think were really going to make good PMs that ended up being some of the better PMs.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Some that they thought were going to be great that ended up maybe not being the best candidates. So it was a really great kind of vetting process.
It was an eye-opener almost for me.
Absolutely.
The second part of this is we had the training courses. So we had, in preparation for this day, for D-Day, call it, we had set up training courses that were a breakdown of project management responsibilities. A lot of firms have different levels of here's your manual, here's your packet. We have an intranet, and we set up these courses so they were kind of interactive. Most of the information was based on AIA standards, and we built them into 4 different pieces. We also had, at the same time, a CRM training course for principals and project managers to take a peek at. So everyone, once they completed that, then they could be approved, and that was the month later. So this was 1 a week. We said, take the time that you need, get trained, and then we're going to move forward. So just a brief history. January is when we started the questioning. Our work in progress or our projections were in serious, we were seeing 40 and 50% swings on our projections. That's not acceptable. You can't plan a firm. February, March, we made the decision to upgrade. Resource planning was chosen to fill this need. May, we just talked about the reset. Long way. June, July, we started the PM training process with the small group and finally rolling it out so everybody was implementing, getting their projects on board. And then August, our major effort to get everything in the system so we could go live. September was our go live date. And then this is where it got unique. October, December, we started seeing overhead dropping and stabilizing, which had never happened in the history of our firm. And this is through current. So when this presentation was put together, it was, I think, end of third quarter.
Correct.
And it held true to the end of the year. Staffing and billing projections had become predictable, and that was one of our major goals. The key issues that triggered all this, our planning was not consistent. It really depended on who the principal was, who the PM was, how much experience they had, and what they decided to do on that day. firm management couldn't trust, like I said, billing and staffing projections. So it was always take your best guess and hope for the best. Project lifecycle, we really didn't have a true defined project lifecycle, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it wasn't connected. It was more, you work in your group, you figure out your stuff, and then you pass it on. And that was not what our culture was about. And finally, our billing process was cumbersome. Accounting struggled with us.
You had the red folders.
we had actual red folders that were handed out. Everybody dreaded them, and they took so long to do. And then there was always the second round of people that screwed up something in the red folder because it was manual, and depending on if they could read the report right or not, you might have the right information. So our goals, we wanted consistency for our tools, and more importantly, we wanted to increase profitability. We wanted to connect our project lifecycle so that we actually collaborated within our firm and not, set up walls. We wanted to maximize efficiency of our staffing and our workflow processes, and ultimately to increase the fidelity of financial forecasting, billing, and staffing. So this is where we took out a video. There was a video that was part of our original presentation, and it's actually in what was sent out, I believe. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. They put together a very unique video that kind of showed how things used to work at their firm, and everything was very, very disconnected. And it was a humorous video. We showed it at Insight, at the Deltek Insight conference. And if anybody's interested in that, we can definitely get a copy of that to people. But it was a kind of a disjointed process, and through the implementation of resource planning, it was greatly improved.
So at this slide in the presentation that's sent out, if you like satire and like little humor, take a look at it. It's only like 3 minutes, and the cool thing is it was all our employees that are the actors, and they did an amazing job acting it up. Anyway, culture. What does that really mean? Prior to implementation, this is how our workflow is, and I would venture to say of most businesses, they have systems in place and they have different tools, and each team operates almost independently, even though they're within the same company. There's a lot of problems though in the handoff, and this is where the inefficiency usually occurs in a firm. We wanted to focus on those moments, those inefficiencies, and get to something that was a little bit more connected. Like Barbara said, red folders, many of the different groups have their own systems. Spreadsheets ran rampant, and they were all different. There was not one spreadsheet between a project manager and a principal that was the same going to the next market or principal. Worksheets, everything was manual, and so there was a lot of room for error to occur. We used a whiteboard for our staffing. In this technological age, we were using a whiteboard to do staffing with 130 people. Design specialist coordination calendars were all separated, so nobody really talked to each other than, hey, did you get us? Do we have the time? It didn't work. Our projections with weekly updates and reviews were really frustrating and convoluted, and our client lists were even out of date. So this is the other side of what we're looking for. So this is our previous workflow. We had different groups as they try to pass information to one another. But our ideal workflow is to have a team to let the workflow connect everyone instead of being a handoff. We wanted to support our culture of collaboration, and this is where vision came into play. So our ideal project lifecycle, when we started this, we said, we need marketing to track. We need principals to connect at the marketing stage as they're doing their activities, as they're building these campaigns to attract clients and opportunities. As they build those opportunities and they set fees and they prepare for the proposal process, we want to integrate project managers. How do we do that? And this is where the three systems need to come together. Project managers and accounting are going to be working together once the project goes live, once it's real. And how do we connect all these pieces? And so this is, for us, we use the CRM, resource planning, and we already had vision or the finance portion. And so for us, these tools could work together. So how are we going to do it? Again, this is an analysis of right before we went live. In our monthly billing projections, and I took the numbers off, but I'm going to give you just a little bit here. We had a line that shows where our target gross billings to break even and where our target profit would be for average gross billings that we would anticipate to support our firm. In January, our projections showed we're going to be a little low, and we actually ended up hitting pretty much on our staffing. But then it got a little weird. February and March showed we were going to have some really good profitability, and then it was going to kind of average out. What really happened, oh, and by the way, this is how we calculate it, see if we can support the employees that we currently have on staff, or if we have to hire or reduce. And you can imagine when you're off by 40%, how that affects what you're planning to do. What actually occurred, don't go too far here, in January, we lost more than we thought we were going to lose. We were below the profit that we thought we were going to be. In February, when we thought we were going to be highly profitable, we only made a little bit of profit. March, the same. And we started to see we couldn't even trust our own information, even if the staffing, if the billings aligned to what we thought they were going to be. We couldn't even trust the profitability and the efficiency of those numbers. And this is why it was so important for us as we switched over. So what causes those profit fluctuations? Miscommunication is probably the biggest issue that we deal with in our industry, of what's budgeted and what people work. In our industry, people love to just keep working. It's just, I don't know how else to say it, but that's what they do, because we're perfectionists in our industry. So understanding that, hey, you have 32 hours to work. I know you have 40 hours in your work week, but you have 32 hours to work. We need to plan something else. If that wasn't communicated or it had changed in a week, it was a crapshoot as far as what actually got worked on your project. And so now you multiply that times 100 employees that are active staff, and your numbers are just all over the place. Second, PICs and PMs under billing. Maybe they pulled the report at the wrong time. Maybe they clicked the wrong buttons in the tool. I don't know how many times I'd hear this, but people didn't understand how to read the reports, because it's basically an accounting system, and those reports are set up for people that understand them. That was one of our problems. Course corrections were not aligned with what was actually being billed, and overwork, as I mentioned. So when we began the implementation process, analyzing where we started, there were three, I think, very important questions that Barbara posed to us, and we can just kind of walk through these. The first foremost was why? Why are you doing this? And if it's just to make a few more dollars, to be a little bit more efficient, that might not require the full extent of the effort that we went through. But our goal was to collaborate. Our goal was to focus on our culture and lift that up. So our why was very clear to us. How? Now this is where it wasn't clear. So Barbara, I don't know, you want to explain? You always pass out a worksheet.
Right. Yeah. So with all my questions, I'm going to go back to the first one for just a moment. I always ask my clients, why are you doing this? And let's start with that end game in mind, because every firm is so different as to why they're implementing project planning. And so if I understand what the reasons are, we kind of tend to work backwards to develop the processes, because resource planning is very process driven. It's not just turn on the system and go. We have to develop those processes. And then how, again, developing those processes. I do have a questionnaire I hand out, and very common with firms, and Architectural Nexus was no different. Each person that filled out the questionnaire had different answers as to what their current processes were, and that's always very interesting to me. And so we see where are they today, and also where do they want to go, and we question things. And you don't want to just keep doing things the way you're doing them because you've always done them that way. How can we be more efficient? How can we change things up to get to that end game?
Mm-hmm. And I laugh too, because I remember those worksheets so vividly, and you had multiple principals that were involved, and you're talking from the president of the company, the VP of operations, someone that's over finance. So we're like heavily integrated, and we're communicating all the time, and our answers were divergent.
Very different.
Then you get to the PMs, and it was like, whoa, it was night and day. And then the question, where do you want your team to go?
Mm-hmm.
And again, ours was culture, so that influenced everything that as we started to discover. So we started to see a few things. Unknown workflow issues, as I talked about, how people handed things off, what people thought they heard or understood. And what we did was we put it together. This is just a screenshot from resource planning, resource utilization. And this is just a glimpse of portion of the employees that we were working with at the time as we started to implement. So up at the top, we say PM training sessions begin. So this is kind of where we started, and we started entering in projects. And as we get to the start of all projects getting built into the system by August, we started to see, okay, there's a lot of red, and red means overutilized. So people are being overplanned. And when they actually were in September, when we went live, this is when the craziness that you should, if I could have been smart enough to record that first staffing meeting when we went live, and it was insane in here. People were talking like, I can't believe we've got all these people planned, and you start opening up each person and seeing who was planned for what, and you realize this was happening all the time anyway. We just didn't know it.
Right.
And we saw within 1 week, people were overplanned consistently, and you could quickly make moves to swap them out. And you think about that. If someone's planned 40 hours on one project and somebody else says, oh, I can grab them for 20 hours, and so they go and talk to that person without communicating through a process, then that person is either going to underdeliver, overwork, or both, and your deliverable is either going to be not good enough or pushed out. And so now it's a ripple effect where it's going to affect somebody else's project that they just planned for the next week to acquire them after they come off of your project. So this is the catch-22. This is the cycle that we were dealing with, and it was hidden from us. We didn't see it. Now we were seeing it. And so by the end of the month, we were able to actually get resolved. We had the right number of employees. There were still some reds, there were still some blues, but there was a balancing act going on. And we were able to quickly see that. So this was, it's not always rosy. Sometimes you have dips in your workflow. We were able to break out project managers, project architects, design professionals, even down to our specialists, and see where the gaps were. And you could see there were certain groups of people that were always busy, always planned, and there were groups that we need to find stuff for them to do. And there were other groups that were being underutilized severely. We also have the ability to see what our future projections. Now this is showing a 3-month look ahead. We were also able to say, do we need to hire? Do we need to reduce? And what's coming up down the pipe? And so this was something that we'd never had before. So what does our process look like now? So again, there's another video that we're not going to show, but it is a cleaned up version of the first video, and it's also quite funny. Some of the things that have come out of this process, we established a written weekly management plan that all of our project managers and principals have. And this is the process that we try to follow to gear up for Monday staffing meeting. So if you'll notice, Monday is at the end. It's not at the beginning of the week, because our goal is to communicate correctly to prepare for the next staffing meeting that sets the limits for our firm. I think every firm has A, B, and sometimes C teams, hopefully not below that. And I think anyone can agree that A teams typically communicate very well, and it kind of downgrades from that point. Without a process, we found that the B and C teams weren't having weekly meetings. Their teams didn't know. So by having something that's a little bit more prescriptive, and this is color-coded, project managers between Tuesday and Wednesday, you need to do this. Everyone needs to do this. And so this is kind of color-coded. We've got specialists, neighborhood leaders, project managers, and we have down here, in case people didn't know, we actually have the names of the different leads that people can coordinate with. And our goal is to include everyone, but give them something to follow. So what were our outcomes? We're now using CRM and planning as a communication platform. Our staff is reminded on a weekly basis, and sometimes a little bit more often, don't just work the hours that are indicated on your dashboard. If somebody comes and grabs you and say, hey, I need you for 20 hours, get it in the plan. If it's not there, it doesn't exist. And they have the authorization to say that, whether it's the president of the company or if some principal is just grabbing them because they always work with them. They have to see it in the plan. It has to be on their dashboard.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we're highly leveraging the Vision dashboard. I typically do that for a resource planning implementation. And so we have, I think for your firm, we're including the next 6-week projection for every staff member right on a dashboard when they log into Vision. So they see when a PM updates the plan, it is a live view for what that staff member is supposed to be working for the next 6 weeks. So it opens up that two-way communication from the staff member to each of the PMs they're working with.
And the initial transition to use it took about a month to 2 months before everyone was actively looking at it every week. So we had them print them out on Monday at 8 o'clock, and they'd bring them to their staff meeting. And so that they knew exactly what they were working with, and there was no excuses like, hey, did you print? That means you didn't look at it.
Right.
And then once that started, once it triggered, I'd say 90% of them actively look at it Monday, the same time every day. We now have monthly training to ensure consistent use with the tools. So remember when we started those training programs that are written on the internet, people forget about stuff that they've read once, but things that are consistently used, they get. And so what we try to do is use those courses and break them down throughout the year and have, hey, we have it's an hour-and-a-half meeting where we bring in lunch. All the PMs come, they link in from the other office, and we go through key issues that we're facing. Billing, maybe it's a little off. Our weekly staffing meetings now strategically place staff based on plans, so we can be more strategic now with our staff instead of being reactive. And finally, management can use resource utilization as a windshield. How has that affected our people? Again, our culture. Management can be more accurate. Principals are able to, this is probably the most important thing that came out of it, we're able to focus more on business development now and leverage our time the correct way. Instead of doing tasks that project managers could and should be doing, we could focus on getting work for the firm and keeping it moving.
Yeah, and I remember at the very beginning of this implementation, we actually leveraged vision security, and we only gave principals access to CRM. They did opportunities, and we actually blocked them from updating plans. They couldn't even get into planning, and project managers didn't access CRM. They had access to planning. I think that's changed a little bit now because we're, a year and a half into this now. But at the beginning, that's how we enforced kind of this culture change, is we used vision security to have people focus on this new, job alignment.
And now project managers have consistently increased profitability because they focused on what their actual job responsibilities were. They were trained with a system that's consistent. So people are able to recreate what they're doing on a monthly basis a little bit easier. And this is probably the one that I appreciate the most. Our accounting is more of a streamlined invoicing process. So I don't know if you remember, there was a month after we went live, we have 3 people in our accounting department, and one of them had a really unfortunate accident. And through that accident, she was out of the office for a month and a half, 2 months, I can't remember exactly, but we were a little freaked out at first thinking, oh man, how are we gonna do billings? We're gonna get hit hard, we're gonna get late billings. One person in the accounting department, of course with our CFO, was able to do the work of 3 people were doing prior to the implementation process. The efficiency of the system, because we were able to communicate directly in our resource planning tool, it allowed the work to continue at a faster pace. Do you want to talk about what we did?
Yeah, because we got rid of your red folders, right? So through the go live process, we streamlined that, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was 1 month we had red folders, and the next month we did not, because we leveraged user-defined fields in the planning module and developed a process with accounting on how we could leverage those user-defined fields for the project managers to provide their invoice updates directly in there, developed some reports, and then accounting was able to do their invoices in a far faster, in a lot faster process than using those red folders. And it seems to have worked, fairly well. And from talking with you, I know it's been tweaked a little bit over time, but yeah, when the one accounting person was out of the office for a couple of months, I was happy to hear that things still were moving along by leveraging those fields.
And I think something that we've tried to reinforce past this point is, before, sometimes there was an adversarial connection between project managers and accounting, because number one, they dreaded the red folders. It was responsibility. They didn't want to do it. It took so long to update those manual processes that it was something that was dreaded by the project managers. They would turn them in. Accounting would say, this is wrong. This doesn't match. You don't have that much money to spend. You don't have this much money to bill. And then they'd have to do it again. So it was a messy process. That communication actually fought our culture. It fought our collaboration and communication. With the new system being integrated, what we've tried to do now is increase the visibility of our accounting department. So at our PM monthly training, we have, depending on what the subject is, we'll have accounting come in and they present to the project managers. This is our recommendations on how to do billings. This is our understanding of how to read the reports. And so they became the experts in the eyes of the PMs. And what I've seen happen over the last about a year, but people are going and talking to the accounting department even more than they were before. And it's not in a negative way. It's, hey, help me understand. They're using them as an expert, as someone that can give advice. And it's been really healthy. It's also helped us reestablish our processes. So we talked about billing last month in our training session, and accounting said, this is what we need, this is what we have, but you guys aren't giving us enough information in your plans, in Vision. And the PMs were all a little confused. They all looked around, their eyes got big, and they're like, well, we probably gave you that information at the beginning of the project when we gave you the contract. And it turned into one of those, wait a minute, we're really not giving what we think we're giving, and accounting was, we're really not getting the information that we thought we had. How do we do this better? And so it turned into a very engaging conversation. And right then and there, our culture was reinforced, our communication increased, and at the end of that month, our efficiency in the billing process increased. And it was one of those things that everybody's life got better because it was a simple workflow adjustment. So just front and foremost, principals and PMs now have the tools to quickly and efficiently manage project finances. It's not a burden. It's, okay, let's do it. We've got a system. Let's use it. So here are the results. This is the part that I wish I had a little bit more data. I guess next year we'll have even better data to follow. Profit per principal as we track this. In 2016, we were at about 72% of our target, and that was a good year for us. That was actually a really good year. 2017, even though our target went down, remember, we were spending an enormous amount of effort in implementing. So this was actually kind of expected almost. And then in 2018, and this was for the end of the third quarter, and it held true to the end of the year, we far exceeded our target, which is, I don't think it's ever happened to that extent, except for we had one blip year that we had a very large project for the whole firm that did very well. This is the results that we were looking to get when it came to profitability. What about revenue? You'd hope that would follow suit. The same thing. Our revenue shot up. Principals were focused on developing business. They weren't focused merely on managing. Accounts receivable. Prior to 2016, our average fluctuated between $800 and $1 million in 90 days. Embarrassing as that sounds, it's the reality of certain markets that we had to deal with. But the time related to tracking down and chasing clients and getting payment greatly improved the moment we started implementing a system, a process, and having project managers take responsibility for their finances rather than having principals refocus on them.
And in part of that, we leveraged the dashboard. And I understand that even though prior you'd been emailing the accounts receivable report, people just actually weren't opening up the report. But once we started leveraging the dashboard, that helped in that process as well. And I hear that from other firms too.
Yeah, anytime you can see something in your face, the moment you open it, it's like, oh, I got to take care of that. It's just a constant reminder. People need that. So by the end of 2018, I know we said accounts receivable had dipped. Our new threshold for pain, that's what I'm going to call it, is about half of what it was before. About 500,000 is kind of the tipping point. Our goal is to get it down to zero. We would love to see clients that act responsibility, but there's certain markets that you're always going to deal with. Okay, so the last one, this is the most exciting for me, principals in the red. This was kind of anticipated, embarrassing as it is, and this is now the new norm. We don't want to see people in the red. We want to see active management. So again, our systems included CRM, resource planning, and finance. And the integration of these three systems through a single process allows the different groups that we have, especially those in our firm, to communicate and collaborate very well. So what's next? We'll continue to work on improving our processes, QA/QC and billing, converting all of our, like I said, into monthly PM training messages, And that comes down to what do we take away from this process? If I were going to do this again, the 3 messages that I would pass on would be focus on your culture and your people. To us, that was the most important. You do that, everything follows suit. Question everything. You don't know what you don't know, and until you go through the active process of having an outside consultation of, hey, have you thought about this, or I've seen this, you're not going to know what you're missing. And then finally, focus on workflow between systems and tools. And again, this all comes back to people and culture. Hopefully something can be found of value in this presentation for you and wherever stage you are in your firm, but I highly recommend Barbara and her team because they've done a great job.
Thanks, Josh.
Great, thank you. This was absolutely wonderful and amazing. There are, I think, 3 or so questions, Barbara, in the questions panel. So if you can, open that up and switch over while Melissa moves into her stuff and get those answered, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and switch it over to Melissa. But before we do that, of course, I have a polling question. So, Kaylee, if you could bring that up, that would be awesome. All right. So Melissa's topic is pertaining to Vantagepoint, and based on this question, you can see that it's based on searches. And so we just kind of want to know what your searches are. It looks like we lost one of our items that was in here, Melissa, but that's okay.
Which one?
The one that says over 50. Oh my gosh.
Oh. Sugar. We know that.
Sugar. There you go. All right. So, wow, would have been cool if we had that one in there. So things are trending here. I think we could probably close out the poll. And so it looks like 10% say none, which is very surprising. 15% did decide to answer the what's a safe search. I don't know if they're being funny or if they're serious. And then the other 2 look like they're split half and half. So there's some of your intel, Melissa, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to you, make you the presenter.
Awesome. That's extremely helpful. If you don't know what a saved search is, then you're going to learn about saved searches today and what they can do for you, but you're also going to learn maybe how to better create them to prepare for the migration up to Vantagepoint. So today is really kind of the second installment of our Preparing for Vantagepoint series. I know the last one that I did last month wasn't as exciting because it was just about telling you how to get up to 7.6 and going over the timeline, which has since changed. So our topic today is way more exciting than that. So we're going to talk about saved searches. So what's going to happen to your saved searches? And this, what I'm telling you today, is different for the people who are already on DPS, had a different experience. So that's Vantagepoint or DPS, same thing, but version 1 is still called DPS. If you go from Vision to Vantagepoint 2 point whatever, you're going to experience what we're discussing today. However, since it's still kind of in the workings and hasn't been released yet, some of this may change before it's released. And we'll do our best to let you know when that happens. So in general, what you need to know about saved searches is that most of the saved searches, if you have them in Vision, will migrate up to Vantagepoint 2 point whatever, and they will be called legacy searches. That's what they're going to be referred to in Vantagepoint as legacy searches. The legacy searches that do migrate will work in Vantagepoint. However, the legacy searches criteria cannot be modified. So basically, whatever you're searching by, when it comes over, you can use it to search the project info center or what have you, but you cannot change the search criteria. So if it's all active projects for Bob, it is going to forever be all active projects for Bob. In addition to that, the legacy searches, the access to them or the sharing of them, which is what it's called in Vantagepoint, cannot be modified either. There is some security limitations with the way that the Vantagepoint has been written. So at least for the foreseeable futures, we will not be able to do SQL where clauses in saved searches in Vantagepoint. So those will not come over properly. You will want to recreate the searches at some point in Vantagepoints, just so that you have the ability to maybe rename them, or so you have the ability to share them with more people, more users, or so you can adjust the search criteria that you have in them. But at least for the majority of your saved searches, they will still work right away, and you won't be under the gun to make that change as soon as you go live. Couple things to note with that: the saved searches for leads will not be migrating up to Vantagepoint because the leads info center is being merged into the contacts info center. So a completely different table, so those searches wouldn't work. Some of the saved searches that you may have in the client and vendor info center areas may not work. It really just depends on what fields you're querying by, because the vendors and the clients have been merged and they are now called firms. And then additionally, project and opportunity saved searches, a good portion of them will come over just fine, but there may be a few that do not. And that is also because opportunities have been merged into the project info center in Vantagepoint. Legacy searches are not available for whatever reason in reporting them. So that may be a reason that you need to recreate them if you use any of those saved searches in any of your reports or in any of your favorite reports, which will probably be the topic of next month's meeting. So what do they look like? So we're going to go in. I'm going to go into the system. So this is Vantagepoint. This is our EA instance. It's on Deltek site, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's going to work for me today. But I wanted to kind of take you into the system and show you live rather than doing a PowerPoint. So this is the Project Hub. And as you can see within the Project Hub, there are several other areas that instead of being tabs are actually different screens in the Project Hub. So I am in the project screen of the Project Hub, and in the search field, you click on the down arrow at the top here, and it displays all of the things that you have in Vision as far as the searches go. So really cool feature, the quick find. You're going to see a lot of fields, especially even in when you're creating the searches, which is amazing. And even in workflows, I believe, have the type ahead searching. So if I start typing, it is searching for me as I go. Saves you a ton of time in a lot of areas in Vision. So that's super cool. These searches that you see at the top here are basically canned standard searches. They're going to be available to everyone who has the ability to search in an info center area, and they're predefined. Beneath that, you have any searches that you've created. So I created what would have been called a folder called Melissa searches. So under my searches, I have organized my searches and called it Melissa searches, or whatever you want to name it, similar to what you did before. And if you expand it, you get to see all of the searches that you organized in that folder. So any search that I've created and saved just for me and me only go into the My Searches, which before in Vision is called Personal Searches. Global searches in Vision would be the equivalent of shared searches that you have here. So again, they can be out under shared searches. They can be organized by folders or just naming them and grouping them together. And these are searches that have been created and shared either with other roles or everyone. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. And at the bottom here are your legacy searches. So these are basically locked in. Even though it has a little edit button here, that just gives you the ability to see it, and you can see you're actually seeing the raw code, but I can't change it. There's nothing I can do in this screen. Can't change it. I don't have the ability to organize it and give other people access to it. It is stuck in the state that it is, but it does work as it is. So again, you won't necessarily lose all of them, but you may not have to create all of them right away to get started. To actually create one or edit any one of these, you can see that it has a little pencil button. So if I want to edit an existing search, I click on the pencil button, or I can do add a search at the bottom. Either way, it's going to take me to the same screen. And as I was preparing this last night and creating a saved search to get some screenshots, I noticed some new fields in here that I think are super cool. So one of them that's really cool is this one right here. Projects with billing terms not checked. Even though it's technically not a checkbox that you actually see, that's how Vision is tracking it behind the scenes in the database and always had. So if, in this case, I'm searching on projects where the status equals active and the projects with billing terms is not checked. Couldn't do that before, and so you can't do that now in 7.6. So you will be able to do that in Vantagepoint. And that's out of the box. That's not a special user-defined field at all. The other thing to note is this is what we call the simple view, and you can insert a line, you can add a field, that'll add a line, you can select your field, and this also has type ahead. So I can start doing, oh my goodness, I thought it did. I swear it did last night. You can look for the field project type, and then when you get to the operators are actually applicable to the field that you've chosen. So in 7.6, you'll get a lot of operators that may not have anything to do or work with the type of field that you've chosen, whereas in Vantagepoint, it seems like the operators are appropriate for the field type that you've selected. So similar to what you do now with Save Search, you pick the field, you pick the operator here in the middle, and on the right-hand side, you pick one or more values that apply. It's literally just point and click, and you can see it's building and expanding this list as I am doing it. Now I can delete that and take that out of here. This button here is to move them around so I can easily sort them in the order that I want. I can copy a line. So all of that is super simple to do in here. And you can see as I'm changing it, this list is constantly refreshing. I can turn that off. I don't need to see it. I can still get the number of records by clicking on Show Results. It'll tell me how many records that I have. I can clear the search so it starts all over again. And I can save my options. So this is actually how you save it and give it a name and then share it with others. So you're doing all of that at once. If you want to create a new folder or put it in an existing folder that you have, if you're like me and you want to organize all of your searches in nice, neat little groupings, you can do that right from here as you're saving it. You don't have to go somewhere else first. Or you can select a folder to put it in. You can give it a name up here. And it allowed me to do, I did a dash or slash in there. It allowed me to put special characters in there, which I thought was really nice. Oh, here I did. I put an apostrophe in, which is difficult to do in a lot of the vision fields. It assumes that you're creating this search for yourself. So myself always comes in here. So I don't need to know who I am. Not required in Vision. It knows who I am, so it's going to save it for myself. But you can also click on the down arrow, and it's a little kind of deceiving here, but if you click on the down arrow here, you can choose my role, which means it'll save it for everybody that's in the same role as me, and I don't have to know what my role is either. Or I can save it for everyone, and it doesn't assume either of those. And then you can also choose which roles you want to do. So you want to selectively save it for roles, you can do that there as well. So super easy to do, very quickly come in here, very much user-friendly. You do still have some advanced settings. If you click on advanced settings, it does give you a little bit more to work with here. Primarily the grouping and ungrouping. There are occasions where if you're picking values from the same field and giving it different options, you have to put parentheses around the first line and the second line. So Vision just made it easier for you, or Vantagepoint, you just check the ones you want to group together and say group fields, and it is doing it for you. You don't have to place the parentheses properly, and it gives you the ability to add at the end or the or. So the condition field, is it the next criteria and end, or is it or? Either or in addition to. So very easy to do, very point and clicky, and constantly refreshing. So that's how you work with them. Okay, we have 1 minute left. All right, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint really quick. And these are just screenshots of what I just showed you. So how can you prepare for them? Well, one, if you have saved searches, review them. See if they're still being used. You'd be surprised how many saved searches are out there that somebody used once and they are no longer valid anymore. Get rid of them. There's no point in keeping them anyway, and there's certainly no point in keeping them and migrating them over. Deleting them if they're unused, deleting them if they're broken. Sometimes people restructure. You change your org structure, and they don't think to go back and fix reports and save searches and calculated fields, or maybe they just missed some. So check them all and see if they're even working. If they're not working and you need them, then fix them. If they're not working and you realize clearly nobody needed it because it's not working and nobody said anything, then get rid of it. Don't carry it over. You also have the ability to export the grid. So if you wanted to kind of make a note of all the saved searches that you have and how they're set up, you could export the grids for them. Really not needed because you can have both systems open at one time, but those of you that in the cloud may not have that capability, so printing them out might help you, or saving them to a file. Identify any saved searches that would have SQL where clauses within them. And then I highly recommend in your test environment, you create the new saved searches and you test them. Make sure that they're working, they're providing you the information that you need, they're giving you the criteria back. A lot of times people create them but don't actually test them and make sure the results are correct. And then you can delete the legacy searches. So in your test environment, you have taken care of cleaning it all up. And then when you go live, if you still have the ability to access your test environment, our programmers at SN can help you copy that from your test database to your live database so you don't have to recreate them a second time. That's it. 1 minute over.
Awesome.
Did good.
Awesome. So I think maybe one of the takeaways from what was presented last month as well as this month and in the future is, hey, spring is here, folks. Might be some time for spring cleaning.
I don't know about you, but it's got 6 inches of snow. It doesn't look like spring here.
Okay, you're right, but we can all get motivated. Or hire somebody else to do it for you, I guess, depending on what your process is. Okay, well, I appreciate the presentations today, both Barb and Josh, who I think are still kind of working away at some of the questions, and Melissa. So that ends it for our presentations for today. Again, please fill out the survey after you get out of the event. Melissa and I both do review those, so it's really important that you give us your feedback. And we look forward to joining you all next month, and we will make sure we get these last few questions answered before we close out the meeting. But everyone have a safe